This is Growth Guide, a podcast exploring the depths of curiosity, questioning everything in the name of growth. I'm your host, Brian D'Alessandro. My guest today is orchestral musician, author, and bioacoustic analyst Kathleen Nagy. We're about to dive into the topic of sound healing, which has really bubbled up to the mainstream in recent years. I'm very intrigued by the subject, and I've experienced numerous modalities and trained in a few myself. Music and sound has as long of a history as we do. All cultures have their own versions of sounds, music, song, and instruments, as well as sound healing modalities. Whether it be the ancient Japanese practice of Kototama, which uses sound to restore harmony in the body, Mongolian throat singing, the sound chambers of ancient Egypt, the song and chants of Kundalini yoga that target specific chakras, Tibetan singing bowls, and gongs, what they all have in common is that they use the vibrational frequency of sound to target areas of the body to move energy and restore health. Different frequencies have the ability to penetrate different densities, like blood, muscle, organs, bone, and so on. What's so cool about Kathleen is that she intuited this healing power of sound about 25 years ago. She was a classical concert musician that noticed the benefits she seemed to get from playing certain sounds on her French horn. She used this practice and developed it to heal herself from chronic asthma. With this undeniable evidence, she transitioned from a career of music for entertainment to one of sound and healing. Kathleen believes that our state of health can be found in the sound mapping of our voice. She says that it not only identifies root causes, but also that our unique vocal range can be used to target and heal numerous issues. Hello, Kathleen. Thanks so much for joining today. Really happy to have you here.
Ryan, it's a pleasure to be with you.
I know we've got a lot to dig into here. Especially we'll cover a lot around your book, Humming for Health. But I'm really, really intrigued around the whole idea of sound healing. It's actually, really come to the forefront in recent years, which I'm excited about because I've been exploring and experimenting in different areas of it, from sound healing ceremonies to Japanese Kototama to kirtans, chanting, cymatics. So I really love so much of this work coming to the forefront, and also a lot of science coming into the work and really substantiating a lot of what so many ancient cultures have known for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's the bad news was 25 years ago when I started doing this, people were looking at me like I had horns coming out of my head. And now all of a sudden, sound healers are coming out of the woodwork, and it seems like the collective unconsciousness has caught up with me. And the bad news was that last 25 years was very lonely. Right now, the good news is I'm the expert because I've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah, and collectively, I think we're ready and tuned for a lot more healing, and I think that's really what we're here to talk about. And my perspective is always that the body is an instrument, and like any instrument, it needs to be tuned in order to sound good or to be healthy. And your work obviously describes just this. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, absolutely. We can take it a little bit farther. You know how they say a muscle needs to be toned? I mean, there are musical references to keeping the body healthy. And the fact of the matter is, our brains are always doing this kind of triage, right? In terms of the biochemistry that it has to work with to do the repairs and all the work that it needs to do. And one of the big inputs, to the brain is the sound of the voice. The sound of the voice to the brain is this biofeedback system that's giving the brain information about the health of the whole body, as the vagus nerve comes all the way up the body, intertwines with the vocal cords, and goes right up into the brain. So the brain is listening to the sound of our voices all day long, whether we know it or not. So we might as well consciously use that feedback loop to give the brain a smorgasbord of possibilities that it can go in and pick, oh, I need that frequency, I need that frequency.
Yeah, and the vagus nerve is something we've covered here on the podcast before. I think the fact that this has come to the forefront is so critical. Vagus nerve is, the literally the backbone of the autonomic nervous system. Steve Porges's work on fight, flight, and freeze is all tied into this as well. But we're recognizing, okay, this is the super highway that runs up and down our spine, and everything is plugged into it. And so, how we regulate is wired through this. And the really cool thing about the work you're doing and so much the other emerging work is that it tells us we have the ability to adjust this, to tune this, to correct this, to tone this. And that's where I'm really excited because it's so empowering.
Exactly. And there's going to come a time, I mean, there are lots of fabulous computer programs and software programs that can do a lot of very specific work, with the voice. But there's going to come a time when we might not have electricity and computers. And then what are we going to do? We have our voices. And that's really all we need. You just got to learn how to use them consciously.
And before we really dive into your work around humming and using sound for healing, let's just go into your journey a little bit because about 25 years ago, you made this conscious switch from music for entertainment to sound for healing. Can you tell us about that a bit?
Yeah, I'm a French horn player, played in symphony orchestras for 20 years, taught music, directed Broadway musical productions. I mean, just did a lot of music teacher stuff, and but it was the I think it was the 1812 overture that did it to me. In Massachusetts, we play that probably 3 times a year,
Hmm.
right? You play it on the 4th of July. You play it at a Christmas Pops concert. You might play it at a Pops concert in the spring. And I was sitting there counting one of my 64 measures of rest, 27, 2, 3, 4, 28, waiting to come in. And I'm just kind of looking around the orchestra and I'm noticing some of the older guys who have played this hundreds of times are just kind of phoning it in. And I thought, I don't ever want to get to that point. There just felt to me like I didn't have one more da 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 in me. I mean, I just didn't. But the orchestra was this collaborative work, where you have to play perfectly in tune and perfectly in rhythm, and you have to play all the notes right. Your part has to balance. Is it melody? Is it harmony? So it's this living, breathing, piece of work where you cooperate with everyone else to make the whole. And I said, okay, that's great work. I enjoyed it. It was fun, but I feel like I have so much more of an understanding of the power of sound than just entertaining people with it. And that's when I started to delve into what kind of sounds could I make on my French horn and how would they make me feel and what was the quality of each note. And I really went in, I forgot all the complexities of everything that I had learned and went to the very simple power of tone, um, and how it affects your body just by experientially feeling it. And that was just, I wanted to do that for the rest of my life because it's still very intriguing to me how it all works.
Mm. And so, was your discovery of this really just self-led? That you experienced it and you just kind of grabbed onto it and went for the ride?
Yes, yes. And then stuff started coming to me. The people that I needed to study with showed up. The comrades, showed up. It just,
Mm.
it was like it was planned to happen at a certain time in my life, and I said yes, and it started to happen.
As it does. I mean, I believe that energy is infinitely creative and it wants to flow. And when we open up the channel or pathway for it to flow, it does just that. And all of these magical serendipities start to unfold that we might call coincidence. But I think it's much more orchestrated than that. And let's get into that as far as the work goes. So your book, Humming for Health, tell me about humming. Humming is something that we're all familiar with, but it's usually this subconscious relationship we have. So how did you discover it? How is it good for us? Tell me everything. I have so many questions.
Well, humming is something that we do for ourselves. Humming is self care. You don't perform a hum ever. I've never heard anyone hum something as a performance, right? Humming is a very personal thing that we do quietly to ourselves in the shower or where no one else is listening. It's a self-care technique. It's a calming technique. It's a way that we calm ourselves down, but mostly it's unconscious. It's a sigh. It's, and then we go on to something else. But the humming, what I discovered was the best part about humming is if you're trying to use sound in your voice, when you close your lips and keep the vibrations inside of your body, that's when you can really feel the power of your voice. When your
Mm.
mouth is open, your sound is going out here, you don't have that much of a connection to it. But when your mouth is closed and all the vibrations are inside, and the way you open your back of your throat and send the sound down or up into your head, and your bones conduct the sound throughout your entire body. And when you know the right notes for all the different parts of your body, you have access to every part of your body with your voice.
Mm.
And what excited me about it was, and how I really got into this humming. Well, for years, this is back in the 90s. I was doing my chakra meditations. And now, let me preface this by saying I'm a musician and I live with my ears. I take information in around me from my ears way before I do with my eyes. So I'm not a visual person. Using my eyes to look at detail is work for me. But listening to the intricacies of everything is a joy, right? So I'm doing the meditations on the chakras and I'm trying to imagine, they're it's a certain color and they're spinning in this direction. And I'm getting this big blank black screen. Never see anything. And after a while, I started to say, this has got to be a bunch of woo woo. I have no proof these chakras exist. I can't see them. I can't feel them. How do I know? Except for the other people in the world who are saying they do exist and they have experienced them, visually.
Hmm.
So being a sound person, I thought, much like how when I healed myself of asthma when I was 40 by finding the note that vibrated my lungs. And when I got to humming that note and I ended up picking up my horn and playing harmonics on the horn, we can get into that later, but playing this chord for 20 minutes a day, all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, I didn't have to use my inhalers anymore. Then a couple of weeks later, the asthma was gone. 45 years, it never came back. So I had this history of, okay, let's hum in the body and see where I feel it. So I thought to myself, if I could hum a low note where I could feel my root chakra vibrate, then I would believe that chakras existed. And I did exactly that. And I found my root chakra note and I found the notes and the scale that made me feel every one of these chakra centers and the glands that are attached to them, vibrating. And I was like, they're real. They exist. I can prove it now. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe in me. You feel it yourself, you experience it yourself, and you know that it's true.
I love that take on it too, because I'd even go as far to say you don't even have to believe in chakras. You can just still experience the sensations and see on a physical level how your physical body is affected. And if you're experiencing that, that might be enough, because some people just get scared off by the spiritual realm of it. I'm not one of those people. I go deep down that rabbit hole, but I still think it's important to recognize it's accessible regardless of your beliefs or how you're coming at it. And you might see it, you might feel it, you might hear it. There are so many entry points to it, and all of them are valid. So I think that's so cool how you followed your intuition and your curiosity to explore on your own terms, and it started to reward you.
It did. And, there's a lot of science that can connect to it to take the woo woo out of it, in the chakra system, in that each of the seven major chakras are connected to major glands in
Hmm.
our system.
And it's all running up and down that same vagal nerve.
Yep. And that system of chakras is turning all these hormones on and off all day long. Take the calcium out of the bone and put it in the blood. Okay, too much calcium in the blood. Take the calcium out of the blood, put it back in the bone. We have these systems of hormones that balance everything. Activate the thyroid, don't activate the thyroid. Adrenaline, you talked about fight or flight.
Hmm.
I kind of explain, I call the chakras your emotional energy cellular distribution system,
Mm.
because that's what it does. That the emotions trigger the gland and the brain to make the hormone. So if you're in fight or flight and you're running from a dinosaur for your life, right? That fear, that emotion of fear, tells the brain to tell the adrenals to make more adrenaline so you can run faster, right?
Hmm.
And then when you stop, you got away from the dinosaur, you're calming down, you're not afraid for your life anymore. That feeling of calming down tells the brain, okay, now make noradrenaline, turn off the adrenaline.
Get the adrenaline out of the body, get the cortisol out of the body, allow the body to come back to that rest digest state. Which now and nowadays, I mean, is such a struggle because it's not running from a dinosaur. It's running to the meeting or missing this or that and watching social media and not having as many. I mean, all of these things that we're wired into. And so I believe that it's more important than ever for us to consciously manage our body systems, to play a conscious role in that. Because yes, these are automatic systems, but if the automatic system is out of harmony and performing a disservice to us, well, we've got to show up and help to bring harmony back to the system.
Right. And so many of us get stuck in that fight or flight and you just can't turn it off. But when you know the notes of your chakras and you can hum them up and down, it's like instant relaxation. All the hormones get balanced and your body goes, Mom, they're playing my song. Your body just like gets so excited when you're giving it the food that it needs, which is
Mm,
frequency. The brain is a frequency generator and transmitter, right? It's all about frequency.
absolutely. And yeah, I this past year I was introduced to an ancient Japanese technique called Kototama. And it's a sequence of sounds that are said to bring the body into harmony. And the sounds move from the base of the spine all the way up. So up that same line of chakras, up the vagal nerve to really tone that whole thing. And all I could say is after going through a session of that, my cells are vibrating, it's alive, and you just feel energy flowing freely. And if you feel nothing else beyond that, just that idea that energy wants to flow, if you feel that flowing more freely, well, everything is going to be getting more of what it needs in the body. And so it's back in that harmony. So let's talk more about humming as a means for that. And I love the distinction you made of closing the mouth and keeping it in. I'm obsessed with this concept of containers and contents and how those work as nesting dolls everywhere. And so if we're projecting outward, well, the content is our words, our sound, our voice, but it's filling the room in front of us. When we're talking about humming as you are, it's keeping it within, and all of a sudden the body is the container. So the healing is happening within there rather than within that room that you're projecting into. So I love that notion. Could we go into that some more?
Well, one of the great advantages to humming that we haven't talked about yet is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule, and it's mostly used to look at your circulation in your blood, and it's used, to help people's hearts, work better. But back when the SARS virus came out back in the 90s, that the first coronaviruses came out, there were actually studies done in the late 90s and early 2000s, and one of them is in the National Institute of Health. And let's see if I can remember the title of it. It's called Humming Inhibits Severe Coronavirus Respiratory Syndrome. I saw that and I almost fell over because these studies were done back then and they haven't been published and no one knows. Now we got the world having a problem with this. And all we really have to do is hum to create more nitric oxides in our sinuses and nasal passages to kill the coronavirus germs before they can set up house and wreak havoc with the rest of your body. I mean, every time I drove back from the grocery store, wearing a mask or not, I was humming in the car because I knew I could feel it, and I knew that anything that was in there was just going to dissipate. Um, so that's one of the major advantages of humming, that it makes more nitric oxide and clears your sinuses out.
And you say it clears the sinuses out, but that's when you're directing at the sinuses. Does that come into play in other parts of the body as well?
I've only used it, in the sinuses, and when you know your personal chakra scale, humming generally will help. But when you know the notes that vibrate this part of your body, say if you know the note of your throat chakra and the note of your third eye chakra, well, your sinuses lives in between that space, right? So what's the note in between this note and this note? And that's the note that's going to really get your sinuses going, and you can you can hum for 5-10 minutes and things just start draining down your throat. You start coughing. Again, you don't have to believe me. You can try it.
Yeah, I
You
think that's right. That's really the invitation here is suspend any disbelief and try to approach it with curiosity. That's the invitation I think that we put out there because that's where change is possible. So I love that. Now you talk about our own personal chakra scale. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, what I found out was, I mean, there when you go and look at chakras, look at the sounds of the chakras, look for charts online. There's a bunch of them, but they're pretty much all the same. You'll see a C major scale. What I found out was that everybody doesn't resonate to a C major scale. It's going to work for some people, though that one of the notes is going to be a little bit off and your heart chakra isn't quite in that scale. There's one note that is off. So when I was finding my chakra notes, I realized it wasn't a major scale, it was a Lydian scale. And that's, music theory, but it's the difference between do, re, mi, fa, sol, which is a major scale, to do, re, mi, fi, sol. It's just one little half step there, but it has to do with the heart chakra. If you sing fa, you're going to feel it like b- kind of in the middle of your ribs, where you really need to be feeling it right here. The thymus gland is here, right? Thump the thymus. It's all about your immune system and making T cells.
I've been doing that thymus tap all throughout COVID.
Well, we can teach you the note that's going to make that vibrate. And what does vibration do? It brings circulation, it brings oxygenation, and oxygen fixes everything. Hyperbaric oxygen chambers fix things that nothing else can fix. Finding your notes, for example, let's go back to, humming in the body again. So if you've got an issue with your liver, well, your pancreas is your solar plexus and your heart is here and your liver is in between. So what's the note in between those two notes? And now you can really feel your liver vibrating, and you can start to generate some circulation and some cleansing of your liver. So not only can you work with the glands of the chakras, but with your voice, you have access to the in-between spaces.
Hmm. And this is, I've experienced this personally, not through humming per se, but through gong baths or chanting in different yoga classes. And I've experienced it. I've experienced that sensation of movement and activation in different parts of my body, my organs, my tissues, my bones. I mean, it's amazing how the different tones of sound can move through places that nothing else can really get to quite the same. For people that are already on the bus and they're saying, yes, now how do I figure out what my scale is? Is that something that you help people with?
Yeah, I do private sessions on Zoom. I spend about 45 minutes to an hour with a person. We find the lowest note they can comfortably sing. Because really, the sound spectrum of our individual voices determines our chakra scale. So the lowest note that I can sing is different from the lowest note that you can sing, is different from the lowest note that operatic soprano can sing, right? We all have different vocal ranges. So our bodies, it's great, are tuned to our voices. And the lowest sound we can comfortably sing will vibrate our root chakra.
I get goosebumps hearing you say this because it is such a simple and empowering notion that we don't need to find someone else to heal us, all of these external factors. We come equipped with exactly what we need for ourselves. There's no one else that's going to give it to us better. I love that.
And our brain is most attuned to our voice, not anyone else's voice. Someone else can tell you over and over and over again, do it this way, or even sing it to you. And it might help a little bit, but it's not going to be as powerful as you doing it with your own voice. So even people who have trouble matching pitches can do this because I've created these MP3s to hum along with. Let me just show you. I have these fabulous, they're called choir chimes.
Wow. Looks like a very big tuning fork for everyone listening. It's like a tuning fork with a little mallet attached to it.
But it's a metal tube, and so the harmonics can grow.
Oh, it's hollow.
It's hollow. Yeah, it's a hollow metal tube. So that you have these just fabulous. So I created chakra scales using these chimes, where I chimed each of the 7 chakras 5 times with the chimes. And then on the MP3, you'll hear ocean waves, kind of let that sort of settle in. And then I chime the next chakra 5 times. And then there's ocean waves. So you can hum along. You don't have to be generating these sounds yourself. You can hum along with the chimes in your scale, in your key. And even if you have trouble doing that, there's an application you can put on your phone. There's a number of them, Androids or iPhones.
And we'll post a couple of those here below.
One is called Pano Tuner, P-A-N-O, Pano Tuner. And it basically shows you, it's an application on your phone. It looks like a piano keyboard. It's got the notes A, B, C, D, E. And as you sing, there's a little red line that tells you exactly what note you're singing.
Wow, cool.
You don't even have to know anything about music. You have your chakra scale. You've got your chakra chart. You know what note is this chakra. The chime is chiming it, but you're not sure that you're matching the pitch and humming along, right? So you pick out your little piano tuner and you're humming and you're going, oh, I am on the right note. Or, oh, no, I'm a little high, I'm a little low. Needs to do this if you really want to do it. But
I love that. As someone who is not musically inclined, I love that simplicity.
I've just tried to think of what is the simplest way. Again, I have forgotten all of the complexities of what I learned to how to play French horn in the orchestra. And I've gotten down to really what's the simplest way for everybody to do this. The other thing that I do with the French horn I wanted to talk about to just make things even more powerful is I play a note into the horn and I sing a note into the horn at the same time. And that creates this chord, this harmonic chord that the brain instantly recognizes because the brain understands how sound expands and what harmonics are. It was so much more powerful to me just singing, but me actually singing into the horn and playing a note at the same time created this huge 7-octave chord. And my body was like all excited. But I thought, well, no one's going to learn how to play the French horn to do this. How can the average person who doesn't know anything about music do this? And I came up with the chromatic pitch pipe, which is just this little instrument that you usually hear in barbershop quartets. Here's your note. And everyone goes, mm-hmm, and they get their notes and they start singing all in the same key. You can't play a wrong note on this because every hole is labeled C, B, B flat, A flat, G, and you just go to that note, a hole, and you blow it. And if you're blowing the A, it's always an A. But blowing and humming at the same time is really pretty easy. Let's start with this note. So that's a D. I'm going to hum this note. I can create harmonic chords with a pitch pipe, and with my fingertips on the pitch pipe, all the meridians in your body and in your fingertips, and all that vibration is going into every meridian of your body as you're blowing and vibrating on the pitch pipe. So there are easy ways to do it.
So simple. What's the role of how we approach this? Do we have to be in an open state? Do we have to be allowing that to be received?
Well, it helps because intention is everything. It helps, but our skin is receiving the sound. Our ears are receiving the sound. The brain is a frequency generator. Our body is just tuned into receiving sound. It's really hard to turn it off. If you're in a very loud place and the noise is getting to you, there's 2 things you can do. as someone who's really sensitive to sounds, two things you can do. One is leave, and the other is to just relax and let it go through you. Don't attach to it. Don't identify with it. Don't just relax and let it go right through you. Don't grab onto it. Don't hold on to it. And that's one way you can kind of survive in a difficult sound environment, for a short period of time.
That sounds exactly like there's a number of modalities out there that I've come across that work with dealing with triggering events or traumas in the body. And when we have that triggering, to just feel that, right? Feel all the feelings, let it flow. Don't attach to story, don't attach to any of it. Try not to tense up or constrict. And that sounds perfectly aligned, which makes sense.
Well, and when you're humming, another one of the advantages is the traumas that have been stuck in our bodies. Basically, our emotions, conscious or unconscious, owned or stuffed, are still getting distributed into the cells of our body.
The issues are in the tissues.
Nice.
It's not mine, but I love it.
It's a good one. So these things become unconscious after a while. You forget about them because maybe something happened to you when you were a child and you didn't have the understanding of how to deal with it. You didn't have the support system to deal with it. You didn't have the time to deal with it. I mean, we all survive this way by stuffing things that we can't process.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you bring them back out later when you have time, which none of us do, they just kind of go to a place in our body that has a similar frequency. And after time, energy, you can't destroy it. Energy just always is. You can change it, but you can't destroy it. So that energy is in there, and after a while it festers, and you got some kind of a pain or disease now, and it's chronic. Maybe you can fix it on a physical plane for a little while, but then something will trigger it and it'll come right back.
Because that's just the symptom.
Exactly. But as you vibrate the tissues and of this etheric area, around those memories dissipate. The cellular memories just die. They can't live in the higher frequency of a harmony and symmetry. They actually die. So while you're doing some of this humming, it's not unusual to feel feelings that you don't know where they're coming from. You're writing with your pen and everything's going fine. And then your pen runs out of ink and you become enraged. A totally out of proportion reaction to something as simple as pick up another pen. But that's a little clue that you're releasing some old anger. Let it go through you. Don't identify with it. Don't like the story, exactly what you're saying. One of the benefits is you can fix these physical issues that have manifested physically that started in the emotional layer, or maybe the spiritual layer, or maybe the mental layer. We can get to them all with the harmonics because our etheric field, our energy field expands exactly the way sound expands. So you use the expansion notes of each sound to get into all the layers of the egg. And that ancient stuff that's in there just starts to float away. And things get healed. Things that didn't work start working.
Sticking with this musical concept that it's being brought back into harmony. It's the same way you hear an instrument that's out of tune and it might make you cringe a little, but once it's tuned, it's just pleasant and it just flows. And so this, even if we drop a lot of the stigma and baggage we might hold around certain words or approaches, just this idea of coming back into harmony, it's who could argue with that? Who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't like it? I dare you to find someone who doesn't like harmony.
And that makes me think of the relationship between sound and math. What's your experience here?
Well, sound is frequency. Math is frequency, and the universe is a mathematical matrix. It's like the movie The Matrix.
So they're one and the same, basically.
They're one and the same. Frequency and sound, math and sound, they don't lie. If you have a frequency that's vibrating at 440 cycles per second, and then you have another frequency that's 2 times that, related to that mathematically, they're sort of mathematical cousins, well, then that note, you'll hear the 880 twice 440 is an octave higher. So this A here is 440 cycles. The A up here is 880 cycles. It's the same note. It's an A. They're all related.
So cool. I love it. I love the simplicity of it and the complexity of it, but I love how accessible it is by everyone.
Right.
So can we get into, you worked for over 20 years in bioacoustics. Can you explain more about that field and how that all ties in? I know this is a version of it, but does it
Well,
expand beyond?
I kind of extrapolated Sherry Edwards' understanding the importance of the voice and the biofeedback loop between the voice, the ear, and the brain. So Sherry Edwards discovered that the brain is listening to our voice, and the frequencies in our voice are telling the brain, okay, this is the energy that you have. So now the brain does the triage and says, okay, so I've got energy for this, and I've got energy for this, and I don't have energy for that. That goes on the back burner. So bioacoustics takes a voice print and a kind of a snapshot. In my days, there were Polaroid cameras that took that snapshot of you, in that instant, and the picture popped out of the camera. So a voice recording is like that snapshot of the energy of your body as your brain is receiving it from your voice. And you can see all the frequencies that you spoke on a graph. And you can see which frequencies are all kind of, in line. And then there's going to be a couple really high frequencies in the voice print and a couple of low energy frequencies. And the low energy frequencies are telling you the brain, your body doesn't have energy for that. That's on the back burner. So we put all of these frequencies. Sherry Edwards has created a frequency map of the human body. We have frequencies for every muscle, for amino acids, for enzymes, for ligaments, and pathogens, toxins. So in your voice, we can see what are the frequencies that are out of balance with the normal range of your voice print. And then we can create balancing frequencies that gives the energy back to those low energy frequencies and squelches the energy of the frequencies that your body's putting all the energy into. And there's a way to kind of balance out that voice print so that everything starts working in harmony again.
So amazing. And so with Sherry's work, she takes a recording of the voice, right? The individual's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens from there?
Well, then we look at it on a graph and we kind of pull out the frequencies that are the most troublesome.
And troublesome against what the healthy frequencies are for those areas?
Troublesome in terms of your vocal energy. Where is the bulk of your vocal energy in that print? That's normal for you. But this up here and this up here and that down there, those are we call them the stressed frequencies. So we identify maybe 20 or so stressed frequencies, and we put them into the database of all the frequency equivalents for the body issues. And the person has told you ahead of time that, I'm having, I really hurt my back, or my shoulder is very sore. I can go find all of the frequencies of shoulder muscles that are too tight, high energy, or too weak, low energy. And we can play those frequencies back to you very specifically. Like, I'm not talking about playing a note. It has a number of different frequencies attached to it because you can hear the harmonics. But Sherry's is like a laser beam. It's like 27.32 hertz. And we have these tone boxes. I don't have one in hand's reach that we program. It's like a little frequency generator. We program your sounds, your balancing sounds into that tone box and tell you to listen to it for so many minutes, so many times a day. And you're just feeding back to the brain what the voice was telling the brain it needed. And if the brain didn't have the biochemistry to fix those muscles, it doesn't need the biochemistry. The brain uses frequency as the essence of everything. So you give the frequency of those muscles to the brain, and the brain can relax or strengthen the muscle with the frequency. It doesn't need the calcium, or it doesn't need the magnesium. It takes the frequency that the voice said was stressed and balances it, puts it back into the normal vocal range, and everything starts to work.
So it's tapping into the body's innate ability to heal.
The reason I after doing this with Sherry for 20 years or so, maybe it was about 15 years into it, I started to realize, I could fix so many things and help people so much with the physicality of their body. But then there was things that just kept coming back. And I was like, we already fixed that. Where's that coming from? And then I started to get the understanding that you can't fix something in the physical plane that initiated in the emotional plane or the spiritual plane or the mental plane. And Sherry's work is fabulous for the physical plane. She sends all the people to me that have the emotional triggers that she knows she can't deal with her program. And she knows that I have a course of action for people who just keep getting triggered. Can't fix it. Keeps coming back.
And so what does someone typically, and I'm sure it varies, but what does someone typically experience through this work? Is it something that while it's happening, they're feeling the effects? Does it take a certain amount of time?
Well, sometimes it's instant. I have people who use it for PTSD. It will stop a PTSD attack listening to your chakra notes. I have people who use it for insomnia, people who use it for depression because it balances all the hormones. It balances out your oxytocin and your serotonin. If you know, all right, let's look at the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland makes all kinds of hormones, in the body. Pineal gland makes melatonin and its precursor, serotonin. So if you're having trouble sleeping and you know your crown chakra note, when you hum it, you're telling the brain to make more melatonin to help you go to sleep. Just wanted to add that.
It sounds like, as far as what elements this can help with, it's really endless.
Yeah, I'm just the tip of the iceberg, beginning, to find out the amazing things that happen. I had one person who had nerve damage in her leg. She was from an accident. She's in a wheelchair, 2 years. Leg is ice cold. Nothing's happening with that leg. 6 weeks into this program of singing the chakras and singing the harmonics of the chakra, all of a sudden that night, after singing the throat chakra for the first time, and the throat chakra supports the root chakra. So she had cleared stuff on the root chakra, which we thought would help the legs, but it didn't. It wasn't until she got to the throat chakra, which is supporting chakra to the root. First time she did that night she went to bed, her leg got hot. Not only did it get warm, it got hot. So much so that she put her other leg next to it to keep her other leg warm. And now her legs are the same temperature, and the nerves are being repaired. And Western medicine says we can't repair nerves. You're going to be in that wheelchair for your life. And the sound said, no, she's not.
I think these stories are so important also because there's a lot that we're told isn't possible. And when we accept that or believe that, it's true, right? It's the Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So these stories are important. Do you have any other stories or testimonials that you can share? Because it's amazing.
People are telling me how their sinuses are draining. And they were always clogged up, how their digestion is all of a sudden, working, how the fluids in their body, their lymph, is moving. They can feel the lymph moving, which is your body's trash removal system.
Yeah. What are the other, issues that people come to you with?
Mostly it's issues like depression and PTSD and anxiety. When you balance your hormones, your anxiety disappears. I have one of my clients who listens to her chakra sounds every time she's on an airplane for the whole flight because she's scared to fly. But when she's listening to her chakra sounds, she's okay. So mostly it's for things like that. It's for depression, insomnia, anxiety that really can be, I want to say, almost some of it instantly, absolutely instantly. First time, one of the people who was sensitive to sounds just sang her chakra scale, she just started to feel this intense sadness. And I was like, okay, just feel it, breathe through it, feel it, let it go through you, and keep humming that note. And eventually, that sadness dissipates and it leaves. And wherever it was stuck, gets better.
Is it similar to somatic release? Are you familiar with?
I'm familiar with like a somatic triggering. I'm not really familiar with the release. Tell me about that.
They're basically an emotional release that might seem disparate or, disconnected from what
Yeah,
the action might be.
right.
But there's usually this big feel of a release or a flood of emotion that happens. And generally, it's followed by some type of, easing or relaxation somewhere in the body.
Yeah, that happens all the time. And one of my clients was telling me, because she did a lot of yoga, right? And she said, "You got to hum while you're doing these yoga poses." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." So I gave it a try, and I was in a very modified downward dog. I wasn't, in a complete like this. My knees were on the floor, and my hands were on the floor, and my head was near the floor. So, my spine was at least, like that. But I got into that position, and I was humming my root chakra note, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I mean, complete surprise, as I could feel the energy move from my kidneys down my back and out my eyes. I mean, this water, this like a couple of tablespoons of water. I got into that position, I was humming that note, and there was a gush of water just released from my eyes. And I was like, well, I guess my kidneys were releasing some old hurt. Um, so even putting yourself in certain positions can make these sounds even more powerful. That's another whole, yoga people can run wild with that, because that's not my field, but I can help, put them in the right scale, and they can play with it.
Yeah, I dabble in that space, and I see how it can pair so well. I mean, even when you look at in yoga, the breath work or chanting, um, they're used to do, similar things where it's to stimulate different parts of the body. Everything is about that. And we've largely lost touch with that wisdom, that body's wisdom and our wisdom, our cultural wisdom of how to engage these areas. And they're finally coming back online, which I really think is a gift, and why I'm so grateful for the work you're doing in this space.
I just think everyone needs to know this. And people get so excited when they learn it. And after that excitement, inevitably comes this anger. Like, why didn't they teach me this 30, 40 years ago? Why didn't I learn this in school? And maybe someday we will. Maybe someday we will empower everyone with the sound of their voices at an early age.
As you were talking about it before, I remembered that when I was a small child, I would always hum when I was at the kitchen table eating cereal. And it would just be part of my thing. I'd kind of go in internally and just hum. And no doubt, there was something else going on within the body where it was regulating. Um,
Probably digestion.
could be, right? But I trust in that wisdom in our body and our intuition. And so I think just giving us permission to trust in that, to explore that, and to open up to that is powerful in itself.
I encourage everyone to do that, just like your whole podcast is all about being curious and being open minded. Because someone thinks humming, oh, that's too simple, that can't work.
Mhm.
There are so many things that are simple that are extremely powerful that we just write off, unfortunately. Some of us are too dumb to do that, and we play with them.
Right. Or we just don't care. We don't care what other think. And, and the beautiful thing is once you have, one of those experiences where something kind of pulls back the curtain, it, it starts to show us, wait, maybe there is a possibility that there's more. And man, that's right. We call it going down the rabbit hole. That's usually what ends up happening, where we can't help but follow that white rabbit a little further. And it seems to never stop giving additional gifts and depths of the levels you could take it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So where do you go with the work next? What's your focus here? You have this amazing book that really explains the whole process and invites people to engage.
Yeah. And if the book isn't enough, most musicians could pick up the book and read it and get it. But then there's everyone else. And that's why I do private sessions, with people. I do group sessions. I kind of train the trainer sessions. So there's people who do Reiki and do different types of energy work, just looking for another tool for their toolbox. And, they've taken some other sound healing courses from people who sort of dabble in sound. I have such a history of really being engulfed by sound for my entire life and understanding all of the intricacies of what note works with another note or doesn't and why. So I came to this, from that perspective of really a sound master. I was always about how can I do it simply and how can I teach it to someone? So I do the sessions online. I'm doing a retreat because I just got tired of teaching on Zoom. So I'm setting up a retreat at this fabulous lodge in the Adirondacks. It's going to be at the end of August. On the 27th to the 29th is a weekend called Lake Clear Lodge in Lake Clear, New York. It's up near Saranac Lake and Lake Placid. And it's this lodge, like 50 people, at the most, can be there. It's on a lake, the clearest lake with the softest sand that 3 or 4 mediums have told me has a portal in the middle of it. They've got 25 acres, and the Adirondacks are known as the healing woods. 100 years ago, the biggest industry in the Adirondacks was health. People would go there who had tuberculosis from all over the world and breathe in all that pine-scented air and heal their lungs. So there's this history of healing in the Adirondacks that I'm helping to try to bring back by going to this lodge, the Lake Clear Lodge. You can go to their website.
We'll include links for sure.
Yeah, and if you want to spend a weekend in this fabulously relaxing, beautiful place with sunsets over the lake and the mountains that are just take your breath away, and be earthing and humming your root chakra note, and inside of all of that nature, just recalibrate your whole system. Come on up to Lake Clear Lodge, August 27th.
The gauntlet's been thrown. For all of you out there that have been asking for this, here it is. So take action on it. I had another bit of an epiphany while you were talking about all of this. And many of other people have probably thought of this before, but in like the martial arts world, the idea of mixed martial arts has come about pretty recently. I mean, within the past, 25 years. I mean, I guess like Bruce Lee and, really pioneered that, but it's very young. And it's this idea of pulling from all of these different modalities where it used to be a very singular and linear school that you practiced. So what occurred to me is like, we're also experiencing this MHA, the mixed healing arts, where I know healers of all modalities they're not just sticking with one anymore. They're pulling from so many different modalities, and they're allowing the individual and the situation to really evoke what application makes the most sense. So I think this is a really a special time in these healing arts.
Oh, I totally agree, because what will work for some person will not work for another person, which is the beauty of knowing your personal body scale. Right there, we're locked, into you. But someone who's extremely visual and not at all, someone who's very heady and very visual and a real thinker. And I asked them, hum this note, and where do you feel it in your body? And they look at me like, what? Where do I feel my voice in my body? Never occurred to them. So it's going to be a little bit more of a leap of faith, for that type of person, as opposed to someone who loves music and uses music all the time, for example, to change your mood, to get you motivated for something. You put on your favorite piece of music. Man, I'll put on, because I'm.
What do you put on?
I put on the Marine band playing Sousa marches when I have to do the dishes. It just gets me going, or I'll put on Tchaikovsky waltzes, when to clean and dust, when I'm working around the house. It's because the music moves me. When my body's moving, I can, be productive.
Amazing. Well, Kathleen Nagy, thank you so much for sharing the art of humming and healing through humming. Really excited for people to learn about this, and looking forward to your continued work.
Thanks. My website is thesoundlady.com, and you can buy the book Humming for Health on Amazon.
Thanks for joining us this week on Growth Guide. A big thanks to our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Project New You. I'm a huge fan of their Nitrovite nootropic brain supplement. It's helped me to develop laser focus, a better memory recall, and motivation. Nitrovite has helped me in launching this podcast amongst completing many other projects. Visit growthguide.love/focus to learn more and use promo code GROWTH for 15% off. This episode is also sponsored by Morning Man. Live manly, own the morning. I learned about this from UFC champ Frank Shamrock. He was always having trouble getting started in the morning without like 7 or 8 cups of coffee. No exaggeration, I've seen this in person. So he created this product that's packed full of 45 superfoods and it has 95 milligrams of clean caffeine. So you get that charge from the greens and also get a hit from the caffeine without feeling all jacked up. I'm definitely caffeine sensitive and I like this product because it doesn't make me feel like I'm bouncing off the walls, but I feel sharp and energized to get shit done. Visit growthguide.love/morningman to learn more and use promo code GROWTH for 15% off. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Atmananda Yoga. You guys have got to check out their yoga alignment mat. I've been using this for a long time. As you know by now, I've studied and trained with them as a yoga teacher, and the mat is incredible to deepen your practice and to ensure a lifelong injury-free practice. Visit growthguide.love/alignment for more info or to buy. Be sure to use code GROWTH at checkout for 15% off. Make sure to visit our website, growthguide.love, where you can find freebies, exclusive content, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in listening, I'd really appreciate a rating on iTunes. I can't tell you just how important this is. Or spread the love. Tell your friends, your fam, heck, tell your spirit animals. And follow me on Instagram at growthguide.love. Be sure to tune in next week for our newest episode.